Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I always said Route 66 runs on three things: gas, gossip, and grit. The gas keeps you moving. The gossip keeps you awake. The grit keeps you from turning around when the road gets mean. My name's Jason Grant, 35, born with a socket wrench in my hand and a sunburn on my neck. I run a little shop off the old highway, a squat cinder block building painted the color of good sky, 2 bays, 1 cranky lift, a soda machine that steals quarters, and a line of license plates screwed to the waiting room wall like a map of where folks broke down and found me. People come to me because I listen to engines and I don't lie. Grant's Wheels, the sign used to say in hand-painted letters my cousin did one summer with a beer in his other hand. We fixed road trip sedans and beat-up pickups and motorcycles that needed more love than parts. We put travelers back on their way and locals back to work. Sometimes we patched a radiator with a prayer. Sometimes we told somebody to call a tow and their mother. I liked all of it, the grease, the talk, the small miracles. And I believed, like you believe the sun will keep its appointment, that I had the right person standing next to me. Amber. My wife. My muse, I used to joke. She could run the front desk like a diesel, steady, loud enough to be heard over the compressor, gentle enough to calm a stranger who thought a check engine light meant their car was filing for divorce. She color-coded the job board. She made the coffee strong enough to get a saint in trouble. She'd twirl a pen, pass an invoice, and grin at me from behind the counter like we were two halves of the same socket set. We met when she brought in a charger with a misfire and a smile I wanted to torque to spec. She watched me run the scope, nodding like she understood graphs, and said, "You make this look like art." I laughed. It is art. Just nobody frames it. We married in a steakhouse off the interstate because the courthouse was closed for fumigation and the photographer owed me a favor. She danced in boots that could have started a country song. I told everybody at the reception that Grant's Wheels finally had an engine that would purr forever. For a while, that's how it felt. She'd hand me a rag, I'd hand her a socket, we'd hand each other the days. Route 66 went quiet after midnight and loud again at 6. We learned which semi-drivers like to talk and which ones just want to sit in the shade until their airline stops hissing. We learned that tourists will ask you where the real Route 66 is while standing on it. We learned how to divide a week: Monday for scheduling, Friday for miracles, Sunday for washing the grease out of our hair. Then the weather shifted in a way you can't point to on a map. Amber started talking about potential. That's not a bad word in itself. It's just a big one for a small shop. She'd palm the invoices and say, "We could charge more." She'd look at my coveralls and say, "You could stop wearing those." She'd look at my hands and say, "You could own 10 shops if you played it right." "I like this one," I'd say, and mean it. It fits my hands. She rolled her eyes in a way that used to be teasing and started to feel like she was trying to flick something off me. "You keep underpricing," she said. "You keep trusting people. You keep being you. And I keep counting 20s like we're a lemonade stand." "It's not about getting rich," I said. "It's about getting people back on the road." "I want a better road," she said, and I felt a little pothole open where my heart parked. She started asking for more money for the house, for clothes, for a gym membership where the trainers wear headsets and say core like it's a secret. She bought a purse that could pay our electric bill and called it an investment. She stood by the bay door sometimes, watching me wrestle a stuck bolt, and flinched like my life was happening too close to her shoes. "I smell like oil," she'd say, and I'd say, "Me too," and she'd look at me like we weren't talking about the same thing. I told myself it was a phase. People change, sure. But you hope they change like the seasons, you can still recognize the yard. Then the casino party happened. You know the one, those charity things where they roll in felt tables and people pretend they're in Vegas when they're really in a banquet hall off exit 7 that smells like crab cakes and ambition. We were invited because I keep the organizer's husband's Mustang running on a prayer and an alternator. I wore a shirt with buttons. Amber wore a dress that fit like a thread. We got little cups of fake chips and some weirdo in a tux explained blackjack like I hadn't learned math at Napa University. Across the room, under a chandelier that made everybody look richer than they were, I saw Amber tilt her head just so, the tilt I used to think was for me. She was laughing like she used to on our back porch nights. Next to her, Blake Chandler, owner of Chandler Motor Works, the competitor down the highway. He advertises with a drone and a promise. "We'll beat any price," his billboard says, which is funny because he won't, and also because he doesn't know how to weld. He had his hand on her elbow, guiding her like she was about to walk into a better scene. The pit boss shouted something. Dice clattered. A woman in sequins practiced believing in luck. I walked over slow, because I'm a mechanic, I don't run unless somebody's bleeding. "Hey," I said, casual like a socket rolling across concrete. Amber turned like she'd been caught by a camera. "Jason," she said. "You remember Blake?" "I remember Blake," I said, smiling with my teeth but not my eyes. "You still painting your floors to look clean?" He laughed big. Big laughs are inexpensive. "Grant," he boomed. "Heard you changed a transmission with duct tape and prayer last week." "Impressive." "Neither of those are in the service manual," I said. "But they're in mine." Amber leaned in, eyes bright with the kind of light that doesn't come from the ceiling. "Blake's offered me an opportunity," she said. "His shop's expanding. He needs someone who knows customers. He offered me a salary that doesn't smell like oil." I looked at her, at him, at the space between us that suddenly felt like a highway divider. "You're my front desk," I said. "You're us." She sighed, soft and practiced. "He offered me a better life," she said, and then a line that cut clean, "Don't try to drag me down." You think you'll shout in those moments. I didn't. I nodded like a man who just found the strip thread and knows he can't torque it back. I went home with my tie in my pocket and a noise in my ears like a belt squeal. The days after became work-shaped. I didn't know what else to do. I opened the bay at 7, closed at 7, ate my burger off the fender of a Tundra, slept on the office couch where the armrest has memorized my shoulder. People asked where Amber was and I said with family because it wasn't untrue if you count the fact we used to be one. I stayed late rotating tires that didn't need rotating. I organized the parts shelf by a system only I would ever love. I watched the sunlight move across the floor like a shop dog looking for shade. I don't know when the sentence formed, but when it did, it cracked something and let in air. "She sold my name, I'll get it back." Names matter more than parts. A part's just metal. A name is a promise. Grant's wheels wasn't fancy. It was a hand on his shoulder saying, "You can trust this." The next morning, instead of starting with brake jobs, I started with a drawer I never open except to pay taxes and remember people keep trying to invent paperless offices even though paper makes you honest. Business license. DBA. A file with our logo, a kid down the street designed for a free oil change and a t-shirt. Registration with the state. Trademark application I'd meant to file and never did because next week is a dangerous place to live. And then, an envelope I didn't recognize, county return address, my name spelled right, a knot forming in my chest. Inside, a notice of assignment. Per your request, it read, "The service mark Grant's Wheels has been assigned to Chandler Motor Works, LLC, along with all associated brand licenses and goodwill." My eyes found the signature, saw my name printed neat under a line that I did not sign. The date was 3 weeks ago. The notary stamp belonged to a guy who likes to be at the front of ribbon cuttings and the back of accountability. The room went quiet like the power had dropped. I stared at the paper until the letters started to look like cans, then I took a picture of it like you do when you identify your robber. I flipped through the file like a man searching a burned house and found more. A 4-member had filed as managing partner. We don't have partners, authorizing the transfer of branding, signage, and marketing collateral to Chandler's LLC pursuant to a mutual efficiency agreement. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to tear something. Instead I wrote 5 words on a yellow pad, "This is not happening to me." Amber must have thought I'd do what I'd always done, work, forgive, hope. She underestimated a man with grease under his nails and a name someone tried to steal. I went to the county clerk. The clerk knows my truck, my dog, my patients. "Jason," she said. "You look like a man who's found a snake in his glove box." "Close," I said, sliding the papers through the little window. "I need to see all filings with my DBA and anything with the word assignment and my name anywhere near it." She typed with the satisfying click of someone who loves rules. "Well," she said, "would you look at that?" She printed me copies, stamped them like they were leaving the country, and slid them back. If somebody's fancy friend got lazy with a stamp, she said, a judge would not enjoy it. I asked for the notary's ledger. She raised an eyebrow that says you're not supposed to ask that, and then said, if law enforcement requested it, I'd have to hand it over. If, say, a citizen filed a complaint of suspected forgery, a judge could request it. We didn't say the rest out loud, which is how small towns talk ethics. I called a lawyer I trust because he once told me not to trust him. I bill by the 10th of an hour. Jason, ask me questions that can be answered in 9 minutes. He read the filings and whistled a tune that sounded like someone's going to regret that. They tried to transfer your service mark on the basis of a non-existent partnership, he said. They forged, pardon me, reproduced your signature, and they used a notary whose commission number appears to have been on vacation that day. File a petition to void the assignment, a TRO to stop the use of your name, and a complaint with the state about the notary. Also, if you want to make noise, the press loves a David with axle grease. I don't want revenge, I said. I want my life back. Then aim for right, not loud, he said. But loud helps right not get lost. I printed everything I had and made a timeline like a detective who knows the crime occurred in the space between let's be reasonable and sign here. Dates. Emails Amber had sent from our shared account to a Chandler address with subject lines like brand handoff and Jason doesn't get it. Receipts for the filing fees that came out of our joint account, which was a nice touch if you're writing a how-to for prosecutors. A screenshot of Chandler's website with my logo airbrushed into his banner, like you can just take a thing and keep walking. I took it to the county courthouse and filed my petition. The clerk stamped it with that satisfying thud that sounds like the law clearing its throat. I walked back outside into a heat that makes a man question his choices, and I kept going, 2 blocks over to the local paper where the editor wears a tie every Tuesday to remind the town that sentences still matter. I'm not asking you to write me a lullaby, I told him. I'm asking you to read these. He read. He whistled the same tune. You want this in print? He asked. I want the truth, I said. If print helps, print it. Everyone loves a small business getting one back, he said. Route 66 angle doesn't hurt. You'll be a legend if you win. I'll be me again, I said. Legend can wait. Amber called that night like a storm somebody named. What did you do? She said, breath clipped. Blake said he got served with a restraining order. He's calling his lawyer. You think your little county attorney can? I filed paper with my name on it, I said. Real paper. With real ink. In a real court. And the county attorney doesn't need to be little to be right. You're small, she snapped. You have always been small. He has a team. You have wrenches. I have wrenches and receipts, I said. And a sign you tried to take off my building. It was my brand too, she said. I built it. You helped me run it, I said. You did good work. You don't get to steal it because you're bored. Silence. Then she said the line I'll remember when I'm old and telling kids not to eat the paint chips. Blake's lawyers will cover this. You'll lose. You always lose. I hung up without saying something I'd have to apologize for at a funeral. Then I did what keeps me from flying apart. I went to the bay and took an alternator off a Civic, because bolts don't care about your feelings, and I needed that. The newspaper ran the story on a Friday. Route 66 mechanic fights for his name after alleged forgery. They printed a photo of me next to the Grant's Wheels sign that made me look like a man who gets up early and avoids mirrors. The comments online did what comments do. Half the town said they knew Amber wasn't right for me, the other half suddenly remembered a time she gave them free coffee. The journalist quoted the legal filings, which is the only love language I believe in at a courthouse. The hearing came quicker than I expected. The judge was a man who polishes his glasses when he's about to tell you what time it is. Chandler's lawyers wore suits like Instagram. Mine wore a suit that had seen more Decembers than Instagrams. We stated facts. They stated vibes. There was an understanding, they said. She was empowered to act, they said. Partnership, they said again, as if repetition could grow a contract where one never lived. Show me the partnership agreement, the judge said, and when they didn't, He tilted his head like a question mark finding its answer. My lawyer handed up the assignment, the notary stamp, my affidavit, the clerk's certification, and the state registry that still listed the service mark under my name. The judge asked the notary to step forward. The notary did, sweating in places God invented undershirts for. "Were you present when Mr. Grant signed this?" the judge asked. The notary coughed up a yes so thin you could see daylight through it. "Strange," the judge said, "given that Mr. Grant's affidavit and 2 sworn witnesses place him under a Chevy at that hour." The room, as they say, inhaled. The order came down like a clean torque click. The assignment was void. Chandler was enjoined from using my brand. The court referred the notary to the state for disciplinary action and possible charges. The court referred Amber's actions to the county attorney for review under the statutes that cover forgery, fraud, and whatever part of the penal code deals with breaking a man's name. Outside, the heat was still the heat, but the air felt breathable. Chandler tried to pivot, rebrand, deflect, bluster. Then the state licensing board, not fond of shops that think paperwork is optional, reviewed his house of mirrors. Turned out this wasn't the first time his paperwork had improvised. They suspended his license. Not forever, nobody gets forever without working harder than he ever did, but long enough for him to feel what a day without easy looks like. As for Amber, the county charged her, nothing dramatic, no slow-mo courthouse steps, just the quiet weight of paper with a seal. She pled to a thing that kept her out of the orange jumpsuit aisle and inside the aisle where judges let you learn things the hard way. We divorced like adults who had been children together and forgot. She kept the purse. I kept the sign. Folks started stopping by just to slap me on the back and buy a soda from the machine that steals quarters. Travelers told me they'd seen the story in a paper somewhere 3 states away because Route 66 carries news like pollen. The editor ran a follow-up. Grant's Wheels wins its name back with a photo of me unscrewing Chandler's Grand Wheels banner he'd rushed into existence, a typo that made the town giggle for a week. Somebody painted a mural on the side of my cinder block, my cousin again, sober this time, of a highway stretching into a horizon, with a little signpost that reads Grant's Honest Wheels. The honest part wasn't my idea, but it felt like the right adjective to earn public. Legend, people started saying, which is a word that doesn't fit a man who still has to snake trains in winter. But I appreciated the sentiment like you appreciate a slice of pie you didn't order. I changed the sign out front. New bolts. New paint. New promise. I didn't raise prices to reposition the brand. I raised them where I had to because parts cost what they cost and math isn't shy. I added a bench under the awning because sometimes all someone needs is a place to sit and remember how to breathe. I hired a kid who loves cars more than school and told him both were allowed if he learned to wash his hands before eating fries. I partnered with a high school auto shop teacher for Saturday clinics where we teach teenagers to rotate tires, check fluids, and tell the difference between a mechanic and a marketer. People ask me if I regret any of it. I regret not filing that trademark the second my cousin hung that first sign. I regret believing that love and work could share a bank account without a contract. I regret the weeks I slept on the office couch because my bed felt like a courtroom. But I don't regret fighting for my name. I don't regret learning that a man with wrenches and receipts can tilt a thing back toward right. Once, months later, I saw Amber at the grocery store, the nice one by the on-ramp where the produce looks like it passed a beauty contest. She looked cinematic. She said my name like it was a town she used to live in. "You look busy," she said. "I am," I said. "You?" She smiled a smile with scaffolding in it. "I'm figuring things out." "Me too," I said, which was true on days when a transmission drops just right and you feel like God has forgiven you for not reading his manual. I still work late more than I should, and I still heat my lunch on the manifold in winter because it amuses me. The soda machine still steals quarters because I still haven't had the heart to give up on it. The line of license plates on the wall has grown. People take selfies with the sign like it's a stop on a tour of places where people didn't back down. Every now and then, a kid will roll in with a clattering Civic and a hat that says a brand I can't afford, and he'll say, "Hey, are you the guy who?" And I'll say, "I'm the guy who can get you back on the road for less than your gaming chair cost, Yeah. He'll laugh. I'll laugh. We'll look under the hood. We'll make a plan. We'll choose the honest option every time we can. If you're passing through, you'll know the shop by the smell of hot rubber and coffee that's been on since 6. You'll hear the impact wrench sing its high song. You'll see a mural of a highway pointing west, because west is where hope parks. You'll see a sign that says Grant's Honest Wheels in letters that cost more than my first car and mean more than any billboard ever could. I learned a lot the year my name almost got stolen. I learned that paperwork is a kind of socket, you don't use it much until you really need it, and then you're glad you bought the good one. I learned that love without respect is a marketing plan. I learned that lawyers can be good or awful and sometimes both in the same hour. I learned that the county clerk is the closest thing we have to a town's memory. I learned that the road doesn't care who you think you are. It cares whether you're lug nuts or torque to spec. On some evenings, when the sunset turns the whole highway into copper and the tourists are somewhere eating burgers and the locals are somewhere telling the same stories with better endings, I drag a chair outside, sit by the sign, and watch the dust settle. The air cools. The neon flickers on. A semi downshifts like a confession. The dog, shop dog now, used to be ours, lays her head on my boot. I look at the word honest and think, that's the only part I really had to defend. The rest follows. One time a couple from Germany pulled in because their rental was humming a note God didn't write. The man had a camera so fancy it looked like it wanted a stool at the bar. He took a dozen photos of the sign, the mural, my hands, the dog, the jar of bolts that will never find their original homes. He asked, in careful English, "What is the story here?" I wiped my hands on a rag that lost the fight hours ago and said, "The story is, a name means what you do to protect it." He nodded like that phrase was a good gear. His wife bought a t-shirt. I knocked the hum out of their wheel well. They left with a map to a diner I like and a promise to send the pictures. They did. In one, the sign frames the highway like a caption. Behind it, cars go where they're going. That's all I ever wanted to help with. If you ask me for a moral, I'd give you this: build your life so your signature isn't just ink. Make your name stand for something you can show a judge and a kid and a stranger in the same day without changing your story. And if somebody tries to sell your name without your say-so, get yourself a good lawyer, a better clerk, and a newspaper editor who still believes verbs matter. I'm no hero. I'm a mechanic with a sign that kept its promise. I'm still here off Route 66, 2 bays, 1 cranky lift, a soda machine with questionable ethics, and a waiting room wall full of plates that say people trusted me once and, God willing, will again tomorrow. Pull in if you need a hand. I can't make your life perfect. I can make your car safer. And I can tell you what my sign tells everybody who stands under it long enough to read the second line. Grant's Honest Wheels. We'll get you back on the road, with your name intact. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.